about that. Let's talk to Benedict Spence, political commentator, on this very Good Friday. Benedict, very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I mean, I'm very well. Only the Labour Party could take a law which has been clarified. It hasn't even really been made. It's just been clarified by the Supreme Court and find it to be complicated and find reasons to be confused about it.
Yes, to take something and then sort of run around the building screaming, setting things on fire, because how can we possibly react to this fairly basic statement of biological fact that we've all known about since time immemorial? But no, this has really put a spanner in the works. And you know, it does sort of make you wonder how it is that a government that is so sort of wedded to the idea of following the letter of what different courts say on things like the Chagos Islands, can have something that is quite frankly as mundane as this ruling and find it so difficult to comprehend. Court turns around and says you have to give away sovereign territory to a potentially hostile power. Oh yes, sir, absolutely. 3 bags full, sir. How much money will we give them? A court turns around and says this is the definition of a woman, and everybody in Labour loses their minds. Yeah,
it is extraordinary, isn't it? And it's good to know as well that the private sector is not quite as free of the wokeists as we thought, because front page of the Telegraph today has got Lloyds Bank saying that their executives, basically, who count 1 in 2 British adults as customers, have basically backed employees at this very tough time who might be transgender. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are here, but I would imagine that there can't be more than about a dozen people working for Lloyds Bank who employ thousands of people who are actually transgender.
Yeah, this is something that has to be reiterated over and over again when we have conversations about this issue. It affects a vanishingly small number of people who make it from childhood to adulthood believing this sort of stuff. And as one of your listeners texted in and say, when you're at that sort of stage in life, middle-aged or whatever, if you want to live a certain way, as long as it doesn't interfere with other people's lives, that's fine. But all that this ruling does is prevent it from further interfering with people's lives. Because let's be very clear, an awful lot of women, the more vulnerable physically of the two sexes, feel very strongly that they shouldn't be put in a position where they're having to share spaces that have always been segregated for reasons of safety and decency. They don't feel that they should have to share them. And I think, frankly, most men agree with them. That is interfering with the majority of people's lives. I don't think it's that unfair. And if these trans women really were women, they'd understand why women feel very strongly.
Yeah, absolutely right. But have a look at Health Minister Karin Smyth, because the Mail this morning is saying that the Labour Party are in all sorts of difficulties and 6s and 7s, as we said earlier. This is what Karin Smyth said. And if you can make any sense of this, I'd very much welcome your deconstruction of what she's actually saying.
We are not interested in so-called culture wars. We believe that everybody should have their dignity and privacy and their rights respected. We're very proud as a Labour government of the Gender Recognition Act that we introduced and the Equality Act, protecting people's rights. I think now is the time to make sure we look to the future, that rights are very clear for people, and that service providers absolutely make sure that they comply with the law. I think all bodies have to look at what the decision means. Rights remain enshrined in the Equality Act. There are protected characteristics for trans people under the gender recognition part of the Equality Act. If there are changes to be made, that needs to be looked at carefully with the guidance. But this law was about women's rights and rights under the Equality Act for sex and for service providers, making sure they're compliant with that.
I don't really know what she was saying there, do you?
No, I think that she was basically just hoping for the interview to end.
Right. I mean, it's sort of putting one word in front of another, hoping to make a sentence, effectively saying absolutely nothing at all.
Service providers have to move forward and do this, and you're just thinking, what? Honestly,
can we not just go back to using nouns to describe things?
The butchering of the English language is a far greater human rights violation than anything that's about to happen.
It actually is. I mean, even The Guardian this morning have got a story on the NHS saying they must act after the ruling on gender. Current NHS guidance in England apparently says that transgender people should be accommodated based on how they dress. Their names and their pronouns. So you could walk into a hospital, presumably, dressed as a woman if you wish to do so. Declare yourself to be known as, I don't know what the female change of Benedict would be. Benedictine, I suppose, I don't know. And you could say, I'm a woman, I wish to be admitted to the women's ward. And of course now they've got a massive quandary on their hands because they've been doing this. I spoke to a doctor yesterday who couldn't get it out of his head that he had to refer to women as biological women. I was like, no, you can just call them women now. You don't have to refer to them as biological women. I don't think anybody now knows what to do.
I mean, just on the subject of what the female version of my name was, I would assume it might have been Bernadette, but, you know, Benedictine is a drink. Benedictine is a very strong drink, and even if I'd had a few of those,
made by
I
monks,
still think I'd struggled to wake up the next morning believing myself to be a woman called Bernadette. But that's beside the point.
Yeah.
The whole thing, though, isn't it about, you know, NHS trusts and what was this other one? The story about maybe people might have to provide third spaces, extra special third spaces, you know, for people who identify different ways. I mean, the whole self-identification thing, for a start, has been proven to be, I mean, half-witted beyond the pale because it will simply be exploited by the worst kind of people. We're talking rapists, we're talking sexual abusers. People will use this to their own advantages. But the whole thing about having to now install extra special third spaces, I mean, as another of your listeners said, you know, they're a very sensible bunch. We already have third spaces when it comes to bathrooms and changing rooms for the disabled. Now, not that we should have to foist those people onto the disabled either, but actually, how many more spaces do these people need?
Exactly, and because in the end you'll be making more spaces for everybody. You know, somebody else will appear out of nowhere and go, you know, I believe myself to be a fox. I identify as an animal, and I want a safe space for myself to go and use the litter tray in the bathroom. I mean, you know, The Guardian have done a whole spread on it, going, you know, from prisons to toilets to lesbian-only organisations, changing rooms, the NHS, refuges and rape crimes. I mean, the idea that you have to tell people that you can't admit men to female prisons or you can't admit men to refuges and rape crisis centres is almost, you know, like something out of Black Mirror, isn't it? I mean, how the hell did we get here?
How on earth did we get here? And yet the only sort of spaces, single-sex spaces, that aren't allowed to be infiltrated, that are sort of exclusively for men, things like gentlemen's clubs, we're routinely told are the absolute bane of existence. So everybody wants their own special space. I need my own special sort of lavatory. I need my own special, I don't know, box at Twickenham because you know, my gender, you know, demands it. But if you just happen to be a chap who quite fancies going for a drink after work in a place with his mates, you're told, oh, no, buddy, that's evil.
That is absolutely evil. Yes, you mustn't do that at all. Absolutely ludicrous. Completely and utterly bonkers. I'm going to show you this as the most uncomfortable video, I think, of the week. We are in Good Friday mode and we are ready to sort of resurrect anything that you'd like to think of resurrecting. But even Rachel Reeves' career, I think, is beyond help when it comes to even divine intervention. Check this out.
From all the people in Scunthorpe and the Steelbirds, they're so grateful. We really, really are. Thank you very much. Firstly, I'd like to thank every department of the government for having our back, because without that, we wouldn't be here. Come June, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for yourselves. So we really, really appreciate it.
Well, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the workers. We were able to step in at the weekend and save steel here in Scunthorpe, but only because we ensured there was something to save. So we're really grateful to you, and the country's really grateful.
I'm smiling, very grateful.
We're very grateful to each other. It is really, really important that, you know, we keep what you're doing going here, and especially preserve the unique things about what you do at Scunthorpe. When we're doing big projects like, you know, investment in rail, third runway at Heathrow, we just signed off this new theme park down in Bedfordshire last week. We want British steel to be used for British construction, and as a government, with the changes we're making, we're confident that will be able to happen. But
sorry, I'm smiling, I'm so happy,
yeah, I am as well, Paul. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what to say about that. Jane says this: are Reeves' teeth glued together? Happy Easter, Mike. This is how she talks. I don't know. And then Glenn from Leeds says Rachel Reeves wears more high-vis than the construction worker from the Village People, YMCA. It's true. I mean, that is probably one of the most awkward videos I think I've ever seen, particularly when she hugs the guy.
The only thing that I was thinking throughout was, do you remember those North Korean propaganda videos where Kim Jong Un is sort of he gets out of his car and all
Yeah.
the workers start applauding and then crying because they're so emotional. And actually, what I thought was, do you know what? There's more dignity in those North Korean propaganda videos because at least everybody can see that it's staged. Everyone knows that they're going to be shot if they don't take part.
Right.
But also, it's filmed better, it's been choreographed better. This was just awful. This was like if you had a North Korean propaganda video, but you've been told you got about 17 pence with which to make it
Oh,
and
man.
about 17 minutes with which to come up with it.
I know.
Which, frankly, given the economic state of this country, sounds about right.
I know, exactly. And the sort of the hard hat wearing Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves thing is just not working, is it? It looks ridiculous. They look so out of place and it kind of is a really good, I suppose, indicator that the Labour Party have completely lost touch with the working class. They don't even look right in a working class environment.
Yeah, I was watching earlier in the week whilst the story was still rumbling on. I can't remember it was Jonathan Reynolds or Angela Rayner who was stood in front of the steelworks. But given the positioning of the shot, she was stood, I think it was Angela Rayner, a good mile away from the steelworks so that it was in the background. And there she was in the high vis with the hard hat, with the glasses. And you were just sat there just going, why? Just why? Why have you decided? Because we all know you've not been walking around like this, all day. Why is it that you're taking us for mugs and thinking I'm going to dress up to look like a steelworker,
Yeah.
even though I'm a good mile away from the actual steelworks? Who are you trying to kid here?
Exactly. One of my favourite quotes of the week was Jonathan Reynolds when he actually donned the sort of I think we're seeing it now, donned the protective clothing, and he went actually into the furnace to remove a bit of steel from it, and he declared himself to have been so hot that he thought he was going to melt. And you're thinking, well, what did you think it was going to be like?
We also sat there going, I wish you'd get on with it and just melt into the furnace. But honestly, I mean, yeah, it looks like all of that footage of him there looks like a scene from HBO's Chernobyl show. And you think,
Yeah.
well, yeah, it's about the same levels of incompetence
Yeah.
that we're dealing with here. It's a good thing, I suppose,
the fake
to stop it
solicitor
from going out. But
The
still.
fake, yeah. Imagine the fake solicitor who's had this meteoric rise to economic prosperity, and he's now running British Steel. It's quite frightening. One final thing for you. We've been hearing a lot this week about the summer of discontent that's coming. Teachers are now saying they're going to go on strike. It looks as though the bin strike is going to carry on in Birmingham for at least several more weeks. They're saying it might last until Christmas. It's likely to spread to other towns and cities in the country. It's going to be a pretty miserable year, I think.
It is. I have some sympathy for teachers. I've always thought if I was locked in a classroom with some of the sort of the little blighters that we have roaming the streets of this country and told you have to try to teach them algebra, I might decide to go on strike in perpetuity. I might find a different job. Yeah, I mean, the whole bin thing, I think, will set off a chain reaction in lots of different local authorities.
Yeah.
And if we're being completely honest here, there's a really easy way for the government to stop all of this, which is if the government turns around and says, well, we haven't actually got the cash necessarily to hand to them, well, you go, okay, fine, maybe consider taking some of these people out of tax. The bin thing in particular is appalling that they're having to take sort of real-time pay cuts
Yes.
to accommodate other people who actually don't do work even twice as hard, again, because of inequalities ruling. But when it comes to teachers, I do know that you have some teachers who now find themselves in the upper bracket of tax
Right.
because of the changing of the tax brackets, and you just think, well, that's bonkers.
Yeah.
Why don't we just take them out of that tax?
Well,
just
exactly
make
right.
them pay less tax.
Well, I think we saw a headline this week that was 11 million people are now being dragged into tax who weren't previously really paying it. So, yeah, it's a massive mistake. It's a massive mess. It's all happening. Benedict, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.